The film starts with the year 1850 shown on the screen. A well-known writer appears, but he is not from the area. He has come to meet someone. He knocks on a door, but the woman inside asks him to leave, thinking he is just a visitor. The writer explains that he is a writer, not a customer. As she opens the door, she recognizes him immediately. This writer had previously met her husband, Thomas, who is an older man. The writer had come to ask Thomas about a story. However, Thomas reacts harshly, questioning why the writer traveled so far to see him. The writer ignores Thomas's anger and insists he wants to hear a story. He even offers Thomas money, saying he will pay him if he shares the true story. The writer shows all his money to Thomas, but Thomas refuses and tells him to look up the story in government records. The writer insists he wants to hear the real story directly from Thomas. This makes Thomas very angry, and he tells the writer to leave, claiming he knows nothing. As the writer starts to leave, Thomas's wife intervenes. She apologizes for her husband's behavior and asks the writer not to take offense. She explains that Thomas has never shared the story with anyone, not even her. She urges Thomas to tell the writer about the incident they experienced. Finally, Thomas agrees to share the story at his wife's request. They were very poor and needed money. Thomas agreed to help because of this need. He called a writer over and said he would share a story that was bearable for him. It wasn't a made-up tale, it was a tragedy. Thomas explained that this incident changed his life. In 1820, whaling was common as people hunted whales for their valuable oil. Whaling was not just a job, it was a passion for many, and people even bet on which ship would catch the most oil. One character, Owen, worked for a whaling company and was content with his life, having a wife and a steady job. Owen met the owner of the company, who informed him that they were sending a very expensive ship out for whaling and wanted him to be the ship's head. This confused Owen because they had promised him he would be the captain next time. Instead, they were hiring someone else named George, the owner's son. The company assured Owen they would hire him as captain in the future, and since his skills were valued, they raised his wages. Owen agreed but insisted on a contract guaranteeing his future captaincy. As he prepared for the journey, his wife expressed her worries about his departure, asking him to promise he would return safely. She also gave him a locket to wear. Owen remembers his promise. Later, we see George, the captain, with his father. His father tells him to go and return victorious. A crowd gathers to send off the whalers, including a young boy named Thomas, who is now an old storyteller. Thomas is on the ship for his first whaling trip, along with Owen, his childhood friend, and other companions. When Captain George and Owen meet, tension arises. George, as captain, is harsh with Owen, but Owen cannot retaliate due to his subordinate position. As they sail, the ship encounters trouble and seems stuck. Owen uses his skills to resolve the situation, showing his experience, while George lacks the same ability. This makes George envious of Owen's talent. That night at dinner, George insults Owen, calling him a commoner and a farmer's son. Owen feels humiliated but cannot respond, so he leaves and tells his friends they need to prepare for an early start. On the ship, those considered common are often looked down upon. The next day, George orders Owen to follow his commands, which Owen does reluctantly. When Owen sees a storm approaching, he warns George that it poses a danger and suggests they turn back. However, George ignores him and insists they sail into the storm, leading them into trouble. Owen is yelling during the storm that they need to turn back immediately. However, George continues to act recklessly and steers the ship into the storm. This puts their lives and the ship at risk. Eventually, they manage to escape the storm. Afterward, George demands that Owen apologize to him in front of everyone, stating they will head back to their island without any whale oil. Owen tries to reason with George, explaining that they can't return empty-handed because many people are depending on them to bring back oil. Owen successfully persuades George, and they decide to continue their journey instead of retreating. 3 months later, they arrive at a part of the sea where whales are plentiful. Owen spots a whale and makes his move. The whale initially tries to escape, but ultimately succumbs. They haul the whale onto the ship and begin extracting its oil. Since they need someone small to go inside the whale, they send Thomas. Days pass without any more successful hunts, and they start running low on food. They stop at an island to rest and encounter another captain who is also there for whaling. He shares a story about his last hunt, where he and his crew faced the enormous great whale. This whale attacked their ship, causing severe damage and resulting in the captain losing an arm while his crew perished. The others dismiss his tale, thinking he is just making it up. The captain departs from that location. However, the crew has grown greedy and wants to sail to a specific area of the sea where the great whale is said to be. They set off to reach that part of the ocean. The story picks up 14 months later. After a long journey, they finally arrive at the location described by the captain and the great whale is indeed there. Armed and ready, they continue sailing, but suddenly, Owen's boat is attacked. They fall into the water and for the first time see the great whale. Just as the captain had described, the whale starts to swim away, but Owen's crew remains in their boat. Seizing the opportunity, they attack one of the whales and manage to kill it. However, the great whale notices their actions and retaliates by attacking their ship, causing it to begin sinking. George, who is also in a boat, sees this and decides to return to his ship. He urges everyone to abandon the sinking vessel quickly. They all get into the lifeboats and gather whatever food they can find. The next morning, they study the sea map, but their situation worsens as they encounter another storm. During this storm, Owen's childhood friend is seriously injured. Time passes and Owen tends to his wounded friend, while the others see him as a burden. A month later, their food supplies run out, and they are on the brink of starvation. Just then, one of the crew spots land. Filled with hope, they sail toward it, and Owen senses something as they approach the shore. It was not just anything. It was a great whale that damaged their boats when it struck them. They reached the shore with the speed of the ocean waves, and their condition was as bad as that of animals. They were eating whatever they could find to survive as they made their way to the island. George asked his friend to start a fire, hoping that any passing ship would see it and rescue them. They were on a deserted and barren island. One day, while searching for food, they discovered a cave filled with human skeletons, suggesting that others had been trapped there without help. They feared they would meet the same fate. They decided to repair their damaged boats to leave, but some wanted to stay on the island, including Owen's childhood friend. Owen promised his friend he would return with help. After 48 days, their situation worsened, and they were barely surviving. One of their companions died, and Owen's friend planned to throw the body into the sea. Instead, they made a shocking decision to eat the body for survival. It was a heavy burden, but they felt they had no choice. This decision caused great worry among them, but they were desperate. They consumed the flesh of their friend. The story shifts back to the present, where an older Thomas appears, feeling sorrowful about having to eat their companion. Owen's wife arrives, crying after hearing her husband's tragic tale. She urges Thomas to continue the story. After 1 month, the aftermath of the events is revealed. The people are lost at sea, trapped and suffering from severe hunger. To survive, they engage in a deadly game, where the loser faces a grim fate. Eventually, they resort to cannibalism, consuming the flesh of the defeated. One day, Captain George loses the game. He hands a gun to his cousin and begs him to shoot him. Instead, his cousin takes his own life. The others then eat George's flesh. Later, they spot a massive whale. Owen prepares to attack, but when he looks into the whale's eye, he hesitates and lets it go. Days pass and a ship appears. Noticing George's boat, the crew comes to their aid. The ship's captain is horrified to find human skeletons aboard. Owen and Thomas, separated from the others, are in dire straits. They see the ship and call for help, ultimately escaping their dire situation. Eventually, they return home, where the locals are astonished to see them alive, having thought they were dead long ago. Owen's wife is there, waiting for him, and they share a heartfelt reunion. On the same day, Owen and Thomas reconnect, and Owen gives Thomas a whale pin as a keepsake. Company management calls Owen and George to hear about their experience at sea. Owen starts to leave, feeling that their story won't be believed. He tells George to do his duty as captain and tell the truth. At first, George lies, but later he admits the truth. However, the company members share a made-up story. Then, we see Owen, who has a fresh start in life. He sends a boat to his friend on the island, keeping his promise, but it's too late as his friend has passed away. This concludes Thomas's story. After sharing it, Thomas asks if the writer will tell the world. The writer agrees, but plans to give the story a new twist based on real events. Months later, we see that the writer has published a book and gained fame, and the movie ends on this note.